Okay, hello, future. Okay, so again, future, this is a relative link. It means it's relative to your website, and what we're looking for is a relative link that is a style sheet, okay? And then href, anytime you see href ever, forever, it means a link. Href means a link, okay? So this little piece of code right here, a little keyword with an equal sign and two quotes, that's called an attribute, all right? If you don't know what that little thing is called, you can still code, you can still make shit. It just helps sometimes to be able to like point to things and like know what the name of it is. Y'all following me? Okay, so in our href, which is how we link stuff, we're gonna find our CSS file first, we're gonna jump inside of it, and then we're gonna find our file. So if I just start typing CSS, if your folder is linked up properly, it should be like this file, like it should be like, is this the one you want? And so you could just hit enter, and then it'll be like, cool, I'm inside this folder, here's everything that you have inside of this folder. And then if you have more than one file, you can use your arrow keys to toggle. For me, I only have one file, so I'm just gonna hit enter. Okay? Does everyone get that little helper message? Does anyone not get the helper message? Okay, if you find yourself in a situation where you do not get the helper message, that means that your shit is broken. Okay, that's a really good a good clue that like you just messed up something with your setup. Okay, so making sure that this is linked up before you start coding is just a really good thing to do to just make sure that everything's linked up right. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start coding. I'm gonna talk about a bunch of different tags and a bunch of different divs while we code, and then we're gonna review what they are on your worksheet after we take our break, okay? So if you have questions, a really good thing to do might be to just leave yourself a little comment and be like, I have no idea what this is, and then bring it up during our lecture. Does that make sense? And everyone knows how to do comments? Okay, so remember, if you're taking one of my other classes, comments in here in HTML aren't as easy as they are in, say, processing or another coding language. It's this like wacky looking thing here, okay? Anything between this like weird arrow sign and this one here, that's a comment. I'm gonna get rid of the script tag because I don't need it. So for instance, what you could do is you could just start typing, okay? And then what you can do is just highlight it and hit Command/. Highlight whatever you want to comment, hit Command/, and that'll turn it into a comment for you. Can everyone see this? Are we okay here? Maybe I'll move up a little. Okay, I'll show you how I did that one more time. I just typed out some plain text, I highlighted it, I hit Command/, changed it into a comment. Okay, super handy tool for you to kind of keep track. If you even want to take notes in your code, that's what I used to do in coding class, and I found it really helpful because then I would open up my old code and I would have all my notes from the day in the code. Okay, so what we're going to do now, if you're a little lost when we're doing this, don't worry about it because you're going to work on your own version of this right after, and Jess and I are here to help. So what we need to do is we need to make the HTML equivalent of what you made in your wireframe, all right? And so it's just going to be a series of elements and nested elements so that we can just figure out like, okay, how are we pretty much going to organize all of this, all right? So if you could think of a website, I'm going to bring up something from last week really quick. Meow, meow, meow. Okay, so this is kind of what we're going for right now. Obviously, your wireframe has a bit more layout in here, but what we're going for is we're going to essentially code something that looks like this, okay? So for instance, we need a body tag, and we know that we're going to have, in this iteration, we know we're going to have 3 paragraphs in the body tag. But notice how this is also wrapped in another container, okay? So what we're going to do right now is we're going to set up these containers. Essentially, you could think of HTML as like a box inside of a box, inside of a box, inside of a box, right? The biggest box being what? The browser, which is HTML. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so browser's biggest box, which is the HTML tab. The body goes inside of the HTML tab. Anything, so your image tags, your p tags, any other thing, your header tags are gonna be wrapped inside of that stuff. All right. if you want stuff to kind of hang out together, right? So for instance, if I want this stuff to kind of hang out together, you need to put them in a container tag, okay? Jennifer, we have the lights for me really quick. So first what we're going to do visually, and what you're going to do that's going to really help you, sorry y'all, that was harsh, with your wireframes, is you're going to figure out like, okay, what are my containers going to be, okay? So I know that I'm going to want a container here, right, for the header, okay? And then I know I'm going to want a container here, and a container here. And then it might help you to just kind of draw out like what each element is going to be represented by. So y'all remember those header tags, H1, H2, H3, H4, will subsequently get smaller. Maybe we want to use an H1 here, and maybe because we want these to be like big obnoxious buttons, maybe we want these to be maybe like H3s. Those are supposed to be lowercase, y'all. Get sloppy. Okay? All right, and then this here, we know we're going to probably want this to be a P tag. And then because we want these images to have like a relationship to each other, we're probably going to want to put this inside of another container. So this container is inside of this container. And then these, I know, are all going to be the image tag. Okay? Does that make sense? How you can kind of look at what you've drawn out just like visually and start to kind of group it into the different elements that you're going to be grouping things inside of. So for instance, these image tags, what kind of element is this? Starts with an N. Yeah, it's nested. It means it's inside of another element. So I'm going to make an element that's going to be this container, and I'm going to put all of these elements inside of this container. Make sense? Okay, so now let's code. Jennifer, would you mind hitting the lights? Thank you so much. Okay, so sorry, this isn't the best visual over here, but just follow along. If you want the lights turned on at any point, or if you want any more clarification about what's going on over here, just yell. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to work inside of the body. Okay, so the first tag that we're going to use, there are a bunch of tags that we can use that are like, so for instance, there's a header tag, okay? But it's like a little out of date. It comes with its own style, okay? We just want to kind of start getting our experience with like making our own tags and making our own style. So what is a generic tag that I can use that you type 20 times for homework? Div, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first make a div tag. Oops. Okay? And I'm going to make sure that all of these are indented a little bit inside of the body. Again, this space doesn't mean anything in terms of code. It's just convention so that you can look at your body really quick and know everything is inside of the body. Okay? And so because I'm going to use a bunch of other divs, I need to give this div a name. Does anybody know how I can name a div? No worries, we're going to talk about this a lot today. We can either give it a class or an ID, okay? A class you can use over and over and over again. So you can have 25 divs that all have the background color of red, and you just have to style them, guess what, one time, okay? That's the beauty of it, all right? An ID is something that you can only use one time. So have you ever been on a website and you click on the menu and it like really beautifully scrolls you to like lower in the page? Yeah? Everyone's had that experience? Okay, what that is that's an ID. You're scrolling down to that exact element that is only ever denoted one time in the website, okay? So ID, one time, class, however many times you want. So because we're only gonna have one header, let's go ahead and use an ID, okay? So we just say ID, it's an attribute, equals, and then we do quotes, all right? And then inside of those quotes, you can name it whatever you want. Go ahead and name it header. Go ahead and name it top of the website. Again, if you're trying, so this is what you'll actually call in the CSS to communicate with this tag, right? You'll give the style to the name of the tag. So if yours is like header space something, or I don't know, you put a bunch of weird characters in there, or you have a random capitalization, if it's not exactly the same in the CSS, it's like it's a different word. Does that make sense to everybody? So again, keeping everything lowercase, and then if you do want to do things that have two letters, or sorry, like two words in it, that camel casing approach is just a good sort of convention for yourself to follow. You can make up your own convention. You could say every time I have something that's two words, I do a dash. I don't care what you do. If you just make up a rule for it in your own mind, it'll save you time later. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to name this header. And then inside of the header, we're going to have 3 elements, right? Yeah? We have 2 images, and we have a piece of type, all right, which I forgot to plan out, all right? So we're going to do the header, and we know we're going to want an image first, then we're going to want a header, then we're going to want another image, okay? So what we'll do first is we'll do the image tag, which is img, okay? And img, the image tag does not have a closing tag, okay? So just don't worry about that for now. All right, and then we're gonna do an h1 here. All right, so this will be our image. We'll do h1, close it out, okay? And then we'll do another image tag. Okay, so now we have our container for the header, and then the 3 nested elements inside of it. Can y'all see? Okay, and just a preview of how this image tag works. There's some tags that don't get closing tags, the image tag being one of them. That's why we have all these attributes, okay? So we have an attribute that's called search. You don't have to worry about this so much right now. It's src equals, and then check it out. It's a link, okay? So when I don't have an images folder right now, but it would link to my images folder, it would look like this. I would say images / and then whatever image I wanted to find, okay? The image tag only works with images. It'll only allow you to pull in images, all right? So that's just an example. You don't have to worry about that so much right now because you probably don't have your images yet. Okay, so that's our nice tidy header. I'm gonna leave myself some comments just so that I know this is where the header starts. Okay, then I'm gonna go outside, give myself some space, and then we'll start the second part, okay? So it depends on how you want to code. It's kind of up to you. For instance, because we have this whole top slice and then a bottom slice, you may want to have like another container that holds these two together. Does that make sense to everybody? Because this whole container and this whole container are being laid out in relationship to each other. Could you achieve the style without that kind of ghost container? Sure, but it just depends on like how you want to organize things. So for the time being, we're gonna like overkill it a little bit. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so because we have this header, we're then just gonna start another div. Okay, so do another div. If I could type. And I'm just gonna name this one. I'm gonna name it with an ID because I'm only gonna use it one time. I'm gonna name it ID equals quotes. I'm just gonna name it bottom. Or bottom half or whatever, okay? Again, you can name these whatever you want. So then inside of there, we're gonna need 2 elements, right? We're gonna need our left-hand side and our right-hand side. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and type those out first. I'm gonna indent in like I did here just to keep it all tidy. So, and I'm gonna call this one, let's do a class here. If you only use a class once, it's really not that big of a deal, but maybe on another page we want to use a left-hand side or something. So let's just call it a class instead of an ID. Class equals, and then quotes. If you just hit enter, it'll fill all that nice stuff in for you. Okay, and I'm going to call this one, actually, before I name it, I'm just going to copy and paste it because you should find ways of saving time and being lazy. And so then I'll name these two separately. So I'll name this one left and this one right. Any questions so far? Is anybody really into organizing things? Like putting things into little things? Alyssa, I think you're into that, right? Like I find this like really satisfying, like piecing this out. Is anybody else feeling that, or we just like just that organizational process? Like I find it to be, because most of the time it's just chaos in here, so I find this to be like really nice and like an organizational exercise. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we need to put some elements inside of left. So let's focus on left first. So I'm gonna go in between my open tag and my closing tag. Does everyone know what I mean by open tag and closing tag? Yeah? Does anyone not? Okay, we're good on that. So I'm gonna go in between there, hit enter, just give myself some space. I'll indent in again, and I'm gonna put my 3 menu items. And because they're probably all gonna be styled the same, we can give them all the same class. But we need 3 of them because we wanna use them 3 times, right? So I think we said this was gonna be like an H3. And you can give it a class, or you can just target, that's what's cool about this. You can actually just target the H3 because they're all going to be the same. You can just target the H3. We don't even have to give it a class. Unless you're going to use a bunch of other H3s somewhere else and you want those to behave differently. Does that make sense, everybody? You can always change shit later. You can always assign, you know, custom classes to things later. But for right now, because I don't really plan on using any other H3s, let's go ahead and let's just put these 3 times. So this is going to be my first menu item, second, and third. All right, so looks like we're done with left. So let's move on to right. So again, I'm going to go into my right class, or my right element here, go in between the open tag and the close tag, give myself some space to work, go inside, hit tab, and then I'm going to put the different elements that I have in here, all right? So I know that I'm going to have probably a p tag, right, because I have a paragraphs. So I'll do p tag. And again, p tag, if I'm only using one p tag, I don't have to give it a class because it's only one p tag, okay? I like to think of it as like, okay, if you were in a zoo, right, and you had like a pen and you had like a tiger and a monkey and a human, right? You would just say, if you wanted to just call the tiger, you would be like tiger. But if you have 2 tigers, the tigers need names. Is this metaphor working? Does that make sense? Right? So like I like to think of it as like this is like a person, right? If you only have one person, you can say like, hey human, and the human in the room would be like, cool, okay? But if there's all of us in the room, we all have names so that I can say like, yo Alyssa, rather than just like human and all y'all answering me. Does that make sense? So it's just like levels of like generalness and specificity. Okay, so we're gonna have our p tag, and then we're also gonna do underneath the p tag inside of right, we're gonna do a div. And I'm gonna name this one, I'm gonna give it a class because maybe I want to use this again. Maybe I want to use the same image container. And I'm just gonna call it something like img container. Okay, you can name it whatever you want, whatever works for you. I'll zoom in a little here so y'all can see. Okay, and then inside of that, we need to put 3 image tags because it's going to hold 3 images. So again, I'm going to indent inside of there, and it's just going to look like this. img. Blah. And I will be lazy and copy and paste this 3 times. All right, and then we can go back through and let's just mark this up a little bit. So I'm going to just copy and paste this comment here. And I'll say header here, and then here I'll say bottom section. And maybe here I want to say left side. All right, and see how these arrows, like, they kind of stick out so that you can really quickly see like what belongs to what. So this is going to be my left side, and then this here, oops, will be my right side. Okay. And then that way you can kind of never get lost. Another thing that I like to do is I'll give myself like a lot of space, right? If this is like a new section of the website, I'll even do like, I don't know, I'll even do stuff like this, just any character, just repeat it, and then leave myself like another comment so that I know like, okay, I finished one thing here, right? And then here I'm like starting something new. So you can mark your code up however you want, as long as it's in comments. If it's not in comments, then it will destroy everything. So just make sure it's in comments. And then the only other thing that I want to point out here is what's really nice about this is when you hover over or click on an opening tag, it'll show you its associated closing tag. So if you're ever, so check it out. If you ever have something that's broken, let's say like you miss a div, whatever you have broken or whatever you're missing, what's immediately below it will turn red. Okay, so I know like, okay, something is wrong here. And so what I can do is I can just go through, I know that my header's supposed to end here. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with this one. I have my open and my close. And then if I go here, check it out. I have no highlighted friend. It doesn't have its like matched friend, right? So that tells me like, oh, okay, I'm actually missing, these all look good, right? Here's that one. Here's that one. So it literally tells me like what I'm missing. I'm missing the closing tag for this element up here. So then if I just start typing it, it'll automatically know like, bitch, you're missing a div. Like it'll just put it on there for you. Does that make sense? Okay, any questions about this process at all? So really what you're doing is you're taking your visual elements and you're just sort of organizing them into like different little web code packages so that we can have an easier time designing it later. Questions? Okay, I'm going to stop.